This presentation is a medley going from A, the history of the growth and shrinkage of the whole Los Angeles area, to B, the high frequency of the wildfires in Southern California, to C, the population growth rate in the state of Utah by its major cities, and D, Salt Lake County's neighborhood and subdivision system. We'll start here with the history and the growth of and shrinkage of the whole Los Angeles area. Los Angeles, California has a big history and growth and development dating as far back as the year 1850, the 19th century. The first people who settled there were from many places, just like everywhere else. They found a good place in Southern California to help to develop another major city in the southwest of the United States. Los Angeles was what they named it based on the Latin American countries in Mexico and some other countries in Central America. They chose it because it was Spanish for the angels. That seems to have been rather convincing because too many of those settlers were bad and showed a whole lot of hatred. Therefore, that's how the Los Angeles got its name. The population back then was about 500. The city of Los Angeles was founded in the year 1890. The population was just under 50,000. That was enough to found the city of Los Angeles as well. Over the years in the 20th century, the population had been growing somewhat spontaneously, but that didn't start until about 1930. During the first decade of the 20th century, the population had grown just over 100,000, and then it tripled in the 1910s of up to more than 300,000. In the 1920s, the population had gotten above 575,000, but then that more than doubled in the 1930s of up to 1.24 million. In the 1940s, the population had reached more than 1.5 million and nearly reached 2 million in the 1950s. By the 1960s, Los Angeles was just under 2.5 million and then nearing 3 million in the 1970s and the 1980s. In 1990, the population had grown up to nearly 3.5 million and then just over 3.7 million in 2000 and then nearing 4 million in 2010. Los Angeles has always been the entertainment industry of making movies and cartoons and all sorts of shows. Their branch of RCA made the audio of all of our favorite stories like Flash Gordon and the Defenders of the Earth. Their record seal was always read to show how stories and other genres of music could be seen clearly. Hollywood shows like MathNet seem to work out just fine as a way to raise awareness with frequent crimes that happen in society. They're not real stories, they're just plays on how to solve problems in society. Hollywood passed the audition of MathNet and other fancy shows. MathNet was derived from both Dragnet and the Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, in the year of 1987. Both shows taught young students how to learn math and to understand society's common problems going on. Of course, Hollywood has been known to have some bad things going on too much crime to have to deal with, but having LAPD to write each of those stories helped us to understand crime rates in society even better. The name Hollywood was derived from a young girl whose name was Holly Woodland. That's why the letter spelling on the front of those mountains was built there for everybody in the Los Angeles area to see from afar. The land part had been damaged too much by something that not a lot of people knew about. Nobody showed interest in replacing the land sign, and so they simply left the sign to just say Hollywood instead. Los Angeles has a university for all sorts of medical and mental purposes. There really wasn't a good enough name for it, and so they simply named it University of California in Los Angeles, UCLA. UCLA has been very popular with diagnosing all sorts of mental predicaments. There was some of the first personnel who discovered autism in 1982. In fact, that's the name they chose for those problems in people's issues as a way to be complementary with society. The history of that name goes as far back to a family who had that name, just like every other people who have been known to have. It replaces all sorts of derogatory and ridiculed terminology people use too. UCLA knows how people function every year when they run tests over them. In 1985, they concluded that every person born in and after 1975 required adequate reasoning to be explained to them after they counted up to a high amount. Just ask them, and you will know about for yourself. UCLA even invented neurophysiology too. In 1991, they discovered up to 10 required abilities deemed to be non-learnable. They started looking for that in 1976, just after the bicentennial of the United States, and the count had reached up to 10 in 1991. This meant that they were going to have to create another associate's level job to remedy it. Since there was no way the teachers in our school system could do anything about it, they had to create another job that's made for remedying a person who has absence in their non-learnable required abilities. There really wasn't all that much they could look upon because they were sure they would have to do it with computers. Science fiction consisted of programming people to work according to standard human functioning, but then in 1991 that started becoming a demand to be made a reality. It took up to 17 years of trial and error just to make it possible for people to sustain artificial abilities that were programmed into them with a computer. The name neurophysiology was chosen out of that kind of job because it revolves around the brain and shows the difference between electrical and mental memory. For machines, it's called artificial intelligence. For people and other living things, it's called artificial parts to promote intelligence. It doesn't replace education needed in school to succeed in life. In fact, it actually promotes getting education needed in school. Those artificial abilities promote the autistic students into succeeding without having to deal with so very many predicaments to have to referee with. Legally, that student is still autistic, but they're succeeding on artificial functioning. Nevermore do people assess students on required abilities without proof of whether or not the ability is learnable based on the phrase, "In order to expect people to act right, you must act right yourself." Growth of Los Angeles started going down in the year of 2020. Evidently, the pricing of the houses and apartments was getting too high to be able to afford. People weren't enjoying Southern California life nearly as much as they used to. It was getting to be too much for people to relate to the heat, and Los Angeles life had gone out of style. The growth stopped at 3,889,834, just 110,166 short of 4 million, and started to decline. In 2021, the population had recessed down to 3,849,297, which was 40,537 less in 2020. In 2022, it had subtracted 26,515 and revealed 3,822,782. In 2023, the population was down to 3,820,194, which was even 2,588 less than in 2022. Now it looks as though the decrease each year has been going by multiples of 9,905. If that analogy rings true, the population will be down to 3,542,854 in 2030. Many of the former citizens who once lived in Los Angeles have been moving to Utah. That's why the state of Utah grows faster than most of the states in America. Utah seems to be easier to live in than California, if you know what I mean. Places in the middle of the wild west of the North American continent grow very popular even though they're inland and not nearby the Pacific Ocean. This means that Los Angeles has reached its limit of growth population and can't grow anymore. The limit of the growth revolves around no more land to buy for the city. According to mathematics, it's called an asymptote. According to geologists and other earth scientists, it's called the timberline, but in every other occupation, it's just called a limit. Here's segment 2, recent studies behind the wildfires in Southern California. There's another reason why people have been moving out of Los Angeles. A lot of places in Southern California have been prone to wildfires. A lot of people who wanted to move to Los Angeles had to change their minds because there was hardly any room to build their homes there. People have lost their homes to wildfires, whether or not it was their house or just the forests. Unlike most places on the North American continent where the wildfires are very easily controlled, it's never been known to be controlled so easily in Southern California. A lot of the land in Southern California, along with Death Valley National Park, are very low and have little or no moisture in them to help to keep those fires under control. And the air down there is too thin to be able to give those trees the atmosphere they need to be able to grow. And so they end up becoming brush instead. It's also because of the high precipitation is frequently followed by drought too. That heavily thin air sparks fires so easily, and they grow very fast without enough people to be able to control them. New forests grow there but end up burning down again. Goose planes from the military base fly by to put out the fires with their water tanks, which is the best kind of wildfire control that's ever been known to work. But it seems to take more than that just to keep the Southern California wildfires under control. That evidence proves that no arsonists were involved in these Southern California wildfires. This is a map of the part of Southern California that's prone to wildfires. Evidently, the land is too low to provide the atmosphere for the trees to breathe in. It's kind of like drought if you examine it clearly enough. All three of these nutrients from the soil, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and water are required for trees to live and grow. Even one of these that's missing prevents growth and life of trees, and that's the truth. The red area shows high areas in and near the Los Angeles area that are prone to wildfires. The red areas show high risks of wildfires in that area. The orange areas show risk for wildfires that are only half as high. You're still partly safe in the orange areas and can still build places there, but you need to be aware of possible wildfire about to happen. As you can see, this area surrounds Los Angeles, California very well. This is a map of the area of a possible wildfire happening zoomed up close. This helps you to understand the area far enough in advance before you move or settle there so that you don't have to find out too late. But here's a map of the Palisades neighborhood of the Los Angeles area. This whole vicinity is gone and burned to ashes, as we saw on the news and heard about it from the radio. There is nothing here anymore, and it looks like there will never be anything built there ever again. A recent video clip on YouTube showed us how to prevent wildfires from spreading and destroying buildings. It talked about building with material that's non-combustible and using stuff to make the fires go around all of the buildings, and how building in those areas causes wildfires to burn hotter. One thing we forget when it comes to wildfires is death tolls. In places like Southern California where there are too many wildfires, the chance of escaping from them is slimmer than just about everywhere else. Research shows that many of the wildfires that have happened were in many places in California, but we need to focus on Southern California anyway, which is why the parts of California where the wildfires have happened aren't listed here. It's best to know what happened in general so that we can focus more on the wildfires in Southern California so that we can find some ways to prevent them. Death tolls caused by serious incidents create a whole lot of people whose hearts are very badly broken. This is how people could easily realize that some broken hearts can never mend. That called for a song by the name of Some Broken Hearts Never Mend, sung by Don Williams. Why? Is because a plane crash happened at about that point in time, and too many people were so badly heartbroken by a heavy loss of people. They knew that their hearts could never mend, and that song seems to explain it all. The wildfires that have destroyed people's homes has made them very sad and broken-hearted, even if they didn't lose any loved ones in it. The loss of their homes made them very sad, and they just couldn't stand the looks of a house being demolished. There's a lot of this going on, even though people lost their homes in building fires and other natural losses years ago. Demonstrations of houses being demolished on YouTube saddens people who lost their home through building fires and natural disasters. There is no practical application for a house demolition to be demonstrated on YouTube or any other kind of media. Such a thing needs to be banned from YouTube, or people who lost their homes will get their broken hearts infected by their loss. If there is going to be clips about houses on YouTube and TV, it needs to show people how to relocate a house with a truck or a helicopter so that people will have a chance to learn all about that, because that's very advanced and needs to be shown how to do it all the right way.